Kufa District Police has arrested 2 persons in connection with the gruesome murder of a minibus driver by suspected land guards as his neighbors looked on helplessly last Tuesday evening. The 52-year-old commercial driver was said to have been butchered by the men following a disagreement over the transport fare charged them. Several others were injured in the attack at Opekuma near Kaswa in the Central Region. Adum TV's Nanaya Abrefo was in the community on Thursday.
According to family of the deceased, the scuffle started between the deceased driver's maid and 2 land guards who boarded the vehicle last Monday after they refused to pay their fare because they felt they have been overcharged. The 2 land guards then traced the driver and his mate to their residence to Opekuma near Kaswa the following day and pounced on the driver's mate, inflicting machete wounds on him. His son, who narrated the incident, said the land guards then turned on his father when he went to his mate's rescue.
I was home when someone rushed to my room to tell me land guards were beating up my father. I rushed out.
How was the feeling like as a son? No, so Papa, now feeling.
But realized the land guards were beating up my dad. They used cutlass. Some were also using broken bottles. My father was helpless. I was also helpless. I couldn't rescue him due to the number of the land guards. I just couldn't help my dad. I had to go hide because they threatened to kill anyone who dares to help.
He said the attackers went on to vandalize vehicles parked in a compound also belonging to the deceased and called in about 10 other land guards to join them. One of the neighbors, who suffered a machete wound on his head and back, says the land guards attacked himself and anyone who attempted to go to the aid of the driver as he lay on the floor dying.
I tried rescuing, but I was also hit on the head with a machete. I had to run for my life. It was very scary.
Upon several fruitless attempts to save the deceased, one of his sons rushed to report the incident to the police at Kaswa. They refused to accompany him to the scene of the incident.
Guards
stormed our home at around 7 p.m. They came in with their knives and cutlasses. We all got scared and ran out of the house. I rushed to the police station to report the case, but I had to stay there for over an hour. No one attended to us. The land guards attacked everyone in the house. They butchered my dad.
1.5 hour cry. Until after 1.5 hour,
the police picked up the 2 land guards with assistance of some men in the community. 8 others wanted in connection with the attack are on the run.
In a related development, President Akufo-Addo has constituted a committee led by the National Security Minister to look into the process of land acquisition in the country. The committee, according to Lands and Natural Resources Minister John Peter Amewu, will assess the difficulty in acquiring land and propose ways of easing the process for individuals and investors. Speaking to Joy News' Latif Idris, the minister said the president was very concerned about the activities of land guards, which are increasingly frustrating those who want to acquire land for various purposes.
The land guard issue, you listen clearly to the president, who is so much concerned about the land guard. I mean, and as a country, you know, investors are coming in, they want to have access to land for 30, 40 days. They are not able to grant it. Some 3 to 4 months, and some of them get frustrated. A clear example is somebody coming out, understand, trying to put a refinery, have acquired the land, you know, started constructions and everything, and, you know, the owners of the land have to come in and stop the process. So difficulties of accessing lands can, of course, frustrate investment program. And if we believe in private sector, you know, as an engine of growth, then we must make land easily, you know, accessible to some of these investors. So we will look into the processes, and we want to assure Ghanaians that we will do what we can as a government to reduce some of these difficulties in the land title administration in the country.
The president has made a declaration on how to deal with the land guard issue. It falls within your remit as the lands minister. Are you going to give it similar approach as we are giving to the issue of Galamsey?
The president has put up a committee together who are seriously working on that. You know, the land guard issue has to do more of a security issues, has a lot of security concerns. So it's being handled, and the national security is in charge, and I think measures are being put in place to address it.
But dealing with the outlawed groups wouldn't be an easy task, considering how wide and powerful the network has become. Journalist Henry Addo, who has had a rather tortuous encounter with outlawed group, warns failure by government to deal with the menace could lead to the formation of rebels in the country.
I beg to speak on this airwave, and let me tell our president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, that he has really taken up the task. And I want to urge him and all the security agencies, we are breeding a country of rebels.
Why do you say so?
We have a group of land guards. We have the NATO, we have the Israeli forces, we have the Russian army, we have the Boko Harams. These are a group of land guards in this country. These guys are hiding in the bush.
With weapons? With weapons.
AK-47, G3, LMG, and pistols, Russian Raget. You can just imagine.
Did you, in your interaction, did you get to know where they got these weapons from?
Sometimes we don't need to talk about the source of information where these weapons are.
No, not the source of the information, yes. But where did they speak of where they got it from?
Our borders are porous. They use the borders as a channel point for smuggling the weapons into this country. But it is sad to say that we have some senior police officers who are not even ready when you call them. They are not ready to come. You make an emergency information available and they don't come. And we have the people at site. They are there with the weapons, trading in the weapons.
So you have
handling brand new weapons for sale. AK-47 rifle in boxes, and they are trading in them, and you call senior police officers and they will not turn up.
Elsewhere, the Central Region Police Commanders arrested a fake policeman believed to have swindled many unsuspecting residents in the Bojuasi district. The suspect, Francis Adakwa, who was spotted on an unregistered motorbike in uniform, initially admitted being a police officer, but then took to his heels during interrogation. Central Regional Police Commander COP David Ampa-Beyin revealed that a search in the suspect's house led to the retrieval of handcuffs and other police accoutrement.
Yesterday, on the 8th of November, in the morning around 0845 hours, Mr. Bernard Norga, the district commander for Bojuasi district of police, spotted a suspicious male-looking character who was on an unregistered motorbike and was fully dressed in police accoutrement. That he confronted the suspect with his room staff. And during interrogation, suspect Francis Adakwa boldly asserted being a police officer with service number 44980, and went further to say that he is stationed at Ejumaku, also in the Central Region. The police quizzed him further, and when he was quizzed further with police-related questions, he gave ignorant and inconsistent answers, and this alerted the police that he was not a police officer. And when he was questioned further, he felt the heat of the questions, and at a point took to his heels. He was given a hot chase and was arrested. He was immediately searched And the police retrieved a pair of handcuffs with security number 34261 and a security Motorola equipment was also retrieved from him. Consequently, suspect was detained, including the exhibits and also the motorbike upon which he was riding. All these have been retained for evidential purposes and for further investigations. I want to appeal to the general public to look out for suspicious character like Adakwa, who are parading themselves as police officers or military officers, alerting the police.
You're watching January Prime. Still to come in the bulletin, Ghana Highway Authority Chief Executive complains about his removal from office, alleging that due process was not followed. We'll be speaking with him, as well as the Deputy Roads Minister. Also in the bulletin, the flag bearer of the APC, Hassan Ayariga, has always made it clear he wasn't for the kind of change the New Patriotic Party preached in 2016. Well, today he cited one reason why the change that came with the 2016 election has not been positive for him.
While as a candidate, he always sent me, anytime it's my birthday, the president sent me birthday cards. But since he became president, I don't know whether he sent it to a wrong address because of the new GPS. It's probably not working.
We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Access to toilet facilities remains a key challenge not only in homes across the country but also in many schools. Research by UNICEF actually states that 3 out of every 5 schools in Ghana do not have any toilet at all. Students in such schools, as a result, are compelled to resort to all sorts of ways when nature calls. One such means is what students at Klo Agogo Senior High School describe as flying.
We have a term called shape on it. Yeah, so excuse my words. We, in quotes, we poo-poo in the rubber and then we wind it, throw it into the bush. And the seniors will tell us that we are opening boutique over there.
We are having a problem with the downtown. We normally call it downtown. We don't have any proper place to. Even the place is even full up, so we suffer before. As for me, I always, every day I go for private, and I use black rubber. Even the black rubber, I suffer for getting some, but I have to use it.
Well, the lack of these toilet facilities presents a real challenge with serious health implications, which, if not tackled as soon as possible, could have grave consequences. But how does any school get built without toilet facilities? Joining us via Skype is Veronica Jegu, coordinator of the Ghana National Education Campaign. Thank you very much, Veronica, for joining us. Now, have you always been aware of the challenge with toilet facilities in our schools, and how bad is it?
Thank you. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Veronica.
Good evening to viewers and to you at the studio. Our work over the years confirmed the reports you're just giving us. The sanitation situation in most of our schools can be described as appalling. Many of the schools, especially those in the rural deprived areas, have virtually no sanitary facilities, and it seems there's a lack of concern when it comes to the provision of sanitation facilities in our school, in most schools. And these exposes the children to all kinds of
All right, Veronica, we're actually having challenges with your line. I'm hoping that it's going to get better by the time I put through my next question to you. But I was asking the question earlier, how is it that a school gets built without toilet facilities?
All right. So, like I said before, there seems to be a lack of concern when it comes to sanitation facilities. It is not really prioritized. When you go to most of our schools, right from the basic level, and you look at the kind of structures that are provided as toilets, it leaves much to be desired. It often looks as if it's only an afterthought. And so you see toilets placed, a certain distance, even when it's available, it's placed at a certain distance from the school. And I must say this particular situation is one of the causes why of dropouts, especially among girls in the schools. The fact that sanitary facilities are inadequate is one of the major causes of dropouts among females in our schools. So it is a very serious situation which very little attention is being given to.
I'd like to, I can understand, even though it's not really what's supposed to be, I can understand when there's a day school without toilet facilities. But we're talking about, as we saw in the story about the Klo Agogo school, we're talking about a school, a boarding facility that doesn't have a toilet facility or working toilets. How's that possible? Or how do we get to that?
So I cannot explain how a contract can be awarded, for the building of a school without the provision of toilet facilities. Like I'm reiterating this because that is the situation on the ground. It appears that the provision of such facilities considered as an afterthought. The structure is put up before the toilet facility is even considered. And so when you go around most of the schools, that is the situation. And so you find sometimes it's just a wall, an open space enclosed by, some makeshift structure that is considered as a toilet facility. Whether it's a day or boarding school, as human beings, I don't see how anybody can survive a whole day without having the need to attend to nature's call. And so toilet facilities are essential anywhere, human beings are gathered for long periods, more especially among children, and as the situation is in most parts of our country, sanitation is not something we pay enough attention to. And that is what we see reflected even in our schools.
Now, I also understand that there are instances where there are toilet facilities, except that they are not in working order. Have you encountered incidences like these?
We have come across a lot of such incidents. So, especially at the basic level, because we've been doing a lot of work at the basic level. And sometimes you go and toilets have been established, but they are under lock and key because the place has not been kept well, so it's not really in a proper state to be used. Or someone just decides to keep the key, with the intention of keeping the place neat. And so before you have access to the key to use the place, it's a whole, process that will even deter you from even making use of the facility. So these are some of the challenges we have in the schools.
Veronica, as a coalition, have you engaged government on this?
Well, with NEC, we are always, discussing these issues that affect schools. But like I said, sanitation is not an issue that has featured much in the discussions that we've had with government. Even though we've done some work, but it's not something that's too much attention is given to. Often when we talk about the school structures, the assumption is that sanitation facilities will be part of it, but unfortunately, that's not what happens. We've had a number of engagements. It's not something that has featured too much in the discussions with federal government.
All right, thank you very much, Veronica Jegu. Veronica Jegu is coordinator of the Ghana National Education Campaign, and we have been speaking with her about the lack of toilet facilities in schools across the country. And as you heard her say, it appears that in most of these schools, the situation is that the provision of toilet facilities happens to be an afterthought, and that she says they haven't quite engaged government on this issue, but I would want to believe that these discussions, as we have more of these discussions, will draw the authorities' mind to the issue of providing or the lack of toilet facilities in schools across the country. And as we heard some of the students at Kloa Gogo Senior High School describe the situation, it is not a really pleasant situation if you're unable to attend to nature's call or have a decent place to attend to nature's call. You're watching Joy News Prime, and we're staying with this issue. We're joined by the Letitia Akong. She is a UNICEF water sanitation and hygiene specialist at UNICEF. Now, thank you for making time to join us, Letitia. Now, you've heard the conversation we had with just previously, with Veronica just before I brought you in. Now, in various research conducted on the lack of toilet facilities in schools, can you tell us how this impacts education?
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
All right, Letitia, if you could just turn down the volume on the TV set over there so that, because it's giving us some feedback, and you can hear me clearly through Skype.
Okay, yeah, okay. Thank you for the opportunity. Good evening to your listeners, the viewers, sorry, and listeners. The question again, you said the impact of lack of sanitation facilities in schools.
So the question is, the question is, how does the lack of toilet facilities in these schools impact on education?
Yeah, follow up with the first lady's contribution. You realize that precious hours for learning and teaching is affected when children will have to look for places of convenience whilst in school if they do not have access to toilets and drinking. So what happens is they come to school and they ask permission to leave, and then that affects school. Some go and do not come back to school, and there have been instances where even kids have been knocked down by vehicles because they were crossing roads to go to other parts of the community to use places of convenience. So in that case, we have a lot of issues with truancy and kids leaving school in and out because the excuse will be I'm going home to visit the toilet.
Now, I asked Veronica this question earlier. I don't know if you can help us with an answer. I was wondering, how is it that some schools are built without toilet facilities?
First of all, I must say, sanitation in general is an issue that has been a priority in the past. And much attention hasn't been given to it in the past. And secondly, the cost of constructing toilets is rather very high compared to government demands for other equally competing needs. So what you
Now, Letitia, we're losing you out there, but I would want to know, you're talking about the cost of constructing toilets being that high, but I would want to think that if you're building anything, any school, it will be a component of the cost of building that facility.
Can you come again?
I'm wondering, you're talking about the cost of building these toilets being on the high side, but the question is, I would want to think that as part of the project or as part of building, the cost of building the school, the cost of toilets would be a part of it.
Yeah, that is when we are constructing. Now, the policy in every school building should have toilets. So that one is already incorporated in the construction of the school building. But we are talking of situations where we have existing schools that do not already have, and now we have to construct new facilities for them. That's where we have the challenge of the cost.
Yeah. Is there a plan? Is there a plan, as you've been engaging government on these issues, do you get the sense that there's a plan to equip these schools that are without toilet facilities with toilet facilities?
Yes, the plans are on the way. Currently, the Ghana Education Service is developing a process package. And then they are looking at how good designs, because the present designs are quite expensive. Most of the dry toilets, which is feasible in our rural communities because we don't have flowing water, is quite high because we just have the KVIP as the main standard toilets that are being constructed, and that seems to be very, very expensive. So we are working with government to come up with designs which are cheaper and yet can meet the needs of the children, so that every school child can have access to toilets by the year 2030, as the SDG has committed us to. So that's one of the way we are trying to solve this problem. If we are able to come up with designs that are cheaper but durable or the same and meet the need of the children, then it means we can be able to cover all these 3,000 toilets that we are talking about within the stipulated time. But if we are to keep to the present standard, then it's a standard design, then it will take us a long time before we can, over 20 years before we can reach targets.
We hope it doesn't come to that. Thank you very much, Letitia Akung. Letitia Akung is with UNICEF, and she's been speaking to us about the lack of toilet facilities in schools across the country. We're taking a break. Well, here on Joy News Prime, we're bringing you business news next. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Thank you very much for joining me on Business. Government has affirmed the 2018 budget would come with some new measures to help address challenges with revenue mobilization. The country over the years has struggled to meet revenue targets, with the numbers not looking so good in the first quarter of every year. July figures from the Ministry of Finance showed that government was struggling to meet end-of-year target of 41 billion Ghana cedis, but the Ghana Revenue Authority has assured that target would be achieved. Speaking at a meeting with journalists on the new tax stamp set to be implemented from next year, Deputy Finance Minister Kweku Kwarteng said it is critical these reforms are implemented to improve upon the situation.
This government's economic management strategy is to shift the focus from taxation to production, which is why we are removing the tax barriers, which all studies showed that constituted one of the burdens on businesses and on growth. So we decided to move away from that, which is why we abolished many of the tax lines. But at the same time, we made commitments to this country before the people gave us power. We promised free SHS. We promised many things that are costly on the public purse. And therefore, there must be a way to raise revenue to do that. Our strategy is to use compliance measures to rake in more. So we're going to see many important compliance measures in 2018. The tax stamp is one of them. You would be seeing the economic point of sale device, the electronic point of sale devices. You have seen the cleanup at the ports. Our strategy now is to broaden the tax net, and you do that by roping in those who are not paying properly in the past, but also by ensuring that those who are paying are now paying the right levels. That is our strategy going forward. In 2017, the strategy was to signal to the market and to the private sector. In 2018, you may not see that number of tax cuts. In any event, there's a limit to how many taxes you can cut. So you may not see that. But what we are seeking to ensure in this budget is that the kind of signal that we can send to business, that we are still relying on them to grow the economy, would be there, and to be there very clearly. So that is what I can say. You may not see the kind of abolition of tax lines as you saw in 2017. But as I said, there would be strategies to ensure that businesses are on board. As I said, the budget is still under discussion. We are engaging on these matters. We are engaging with industry. And when the budget is out, I'm sure all these matters will be clear.
Oil firm Cosmos Energy says it would spend $1.5 billion on developing the last segment of the Jubilee fields. This follows the approval of a development plan put forward by the company. Country manager of Cosmos, Joe Mensah, says the company will also begin drilling more wells from January next year after overcoming the major operational challenges of 2016. We sincerely apologize we cannot bring you the story now, but moving on in our Budget Watch series, fruit processing company Blue Skies has already laid off 1,500 workers this year in what officials say is a desperate attempt to cut down costs emanating from the depreciating value of the cedi, as well as excessive import of fruit juice into the country. Founder of the company, Anthony Pyle, says the situation is dire and he believes the new Marshall Plan to be announced in the 2018 budget must throw a lifeline to agribusinesses if they will help turn the fortunes around.
About 10 years ago, there was a major shift in the pineapple industry that actually sent many pineapple farmers, well, really going out of business. The issue was a shift from Smooth Cayenne to MD2 that was touted as the demand that the international market was looking for. Many farmers stopped production and died with the whole process. Government support for the pineapple sector, according to farmers, has virtually been zero, as Smooth Cayenne export figures stand at 3% compared to 10% in 2004. Blue Sky saved my business in 2004 when the MD2 shift began. Joshua Ayimboro tells the news team. Smooth Cayenne has been a critical product to Blue Skies. The company invested in outgrowers to save their own company. So far, some 600,000 Ghana cedis has been invested in Joshua's 500-acre Smooth Cayenne business to become the largest Smooth Cayenne producer.
The industry is going down because people are running from the business because of they are not having any support from government. But I think there is a demand. As now I'm planting, I think I cannot meet my demand because the demand is higher.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
at time they import pineapple from Côte d'Ivoire, Togo, before processed and export it again.
the Planting for Food and Jobs program, which started in April 2017, included a gardening component for senior high school students. But before then, Blue Skies had started a senior high school garden competition. Products from the farms of the students have already been harvested and sold. 3 years ago, Blue Skies also employed a Kayaye, that's a head porter, who has risen through the ranks to become a team leader.
From Kayaye to working in Blue Sky, it has never been easy. Since I got this employment, it has been great impartation upon my life. It has made my family life very good. At first, even what to eat was even difficult. That one is one point. Every day I always wake up and I say, God, me that I can even eat and leave some of the food there, then I'll be thinking of when to get the next meal to eat. But now I don't think about that again.
I met the CEO, Anthony Pyle, who says his company, built 20 years ago, is collapsing.
By June, July last year, and I would say for most of that period, we were running at about 3,500 to 4,000 people here. We're down to around half that now. I have a house, as you know, just a couple of kilometers away. And I can tell you, I am hugely moved by the number of people who come in and with tears pouring down their face to say, please, you are our father. I have no father. We have no business. You've got to re-employ us.
The 2018 budget will have to be strategic in its drive in the agric sector, especially if exports and agribusinesses are likely to be the target in the Agric Marshall Plan. The cedi's so-called stability makes the import market more attractive to the deterrent of exports.
That's my app that tells you the difference between each day over the last 6 months, the cedi and the local Ghana cedi. Okay? You don't find any currency in the world going flat like that. Normally they do this because they're reacting to economic circumstances and what have you. This one is managed, and it's hugely damaging because there is about 12% inflation here. The fact that I have to import breast meat for our now 2,000 staff and rice and all the other bits and pieces of food that they need, I have to import it. And we can't grow it here when actually this country, it's a garden. This country can produce the finest food in the world, and yet I have to import it. Why? Because the cedi is so strong that I can actually, it's better for me to import it than not.
So the question on my mind while putting this story together is, why will a company like Blue Skies be allowed to die when it has a track record of implementing parts of the Planting for Food and Jobs plan and saving the pineapple industry? The One District, One Factory policy hopes to show up Ghana's industrial drive when it comes to agribusinesses, keying in the Agric Marshall Plan and Planting for Food and Jobs. A lot will have to be said in the 2018 budget to save existing companies and new ones. Udile Ntiamwa, Joy Business.
Now, the Comptroller and Accountant General's Department has inaugurated a 4-member audit committee to ensure prudent use of public funds. Speaking at the launch, the Auditor General, Daniel Yao Domelovo, says the committee should establish an action plan to facilitate financial management of the public sector.
Let's be very careful. The accounts we prepare for 2017 is not going to be the same as that of last year, because this PFM Act is requiring you under the schedule to prepare accounts on the public funds, no more consolidated fund. As an audit committee, this is my personal suggestion. One of the value addition that we can introduce in this country is when the audit reports are out, there is the need to have an action plan as to how to address the systemic weaknesses which brought about the infractions. And I'll be very happy seeing the audit committees doing this than just looking at who didn't account for Impress and who bought goods. These are the peripherals. Normally it is weaknesses in the internal control that bring this. So let's not be addressing the symptoms, but let's look for the disease itself. which are the control weaknesses. And I think with that, we can improve our financial management seriously.
And that's all in business tonight. Many thanks for your company. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. We are free. Have a good evening.
Business was brought to you in association with Vodafone, Power to You, and EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
Minority spokesperson on finance, Cassel Atofosing, is alleging that over 177 million Ghana cedis was spent on the energy sector bond, which failed to meet its target. Government sold the bonds to raise funds to offset the $2.5 billion legacy debt in the energy sector. The opposition NDC believes government's failure to raise all the money it wanted is a vote of no confidence in its management of the economy. Cassel Atofosing says the cost of the bond sale is disproportionate to the amount of money eventually raised.
The VRA ECG owes certain local banks, and because they own these banks, the government decided to swap the bond that these banks own to VRA ECG, or the energy sector owns to these banks with a bond. So that is one. Obviously, you agree with me that the debt for the energy sector is not only relating to the banks, some of them relate to certain trade creditors. And clearly you will notice that apart from, if you look at the mix, the government intended to raise 6 billion for the purposes of using 4 billion to pay the banks and about 2 billion for the purposes of paying the trade creditors. So clearly the intention of the government is to go out there and raise fiscal cash 2 billion, which clearly it failed. And you agree with me that the amount of money that was actually realized is under 700 million. After an extensive roadshow, the state, after extensive roadshow, foreigners only participated by less than 100 million, and the local investors participated by about 600 million. Clearly, what is surprising is the cost. From the cost that I have, that the taxpayer is paying, the ranges, the bank, the state is paying the ranges 87.5 million Ghana cedis. The state is paying legal fees of 700,000 Ghana cedis. The state is paying the accountant of 350,000 Ghana cedis. Surprisingly, the state is paying administrative expenses of 80 million Ghana cedis. 80 million Ghana cedis administrative expenses. Overall, the state is paying 177 million Ghana cedis. I think this amount is way too much. This is not the first time the state is raising a bond. The last bond that we raised under the Euro bond of 1 billion, which translates to about 4.4 billion, the total cost was under 0.2%. Today we are seeing a bond that we are raising for about 4 billion, and the cost is 1.77%. 1.77% translating to 177 million Ghana cedis. I think it's important that we ask the questions. So the question we are asking is that we want the Ministry of Finance to provide the state with better and further particulars. We are asking for full breakdown of what constituted the administrative expenses. Administrative expenses of raising a bond of 80 million Ghana cedis. You are paying the arrangers 87.5 million Ghana cedis. Printing alone, of the roadshow material was 400,000 Ghana cedis. This is not I'm not manufacturing document. This is everywhere. You can go and Google the roadshow material and look at page 29. It is there. Page 29 of the roadshow material is there. The investors are asking questions. How come that the state is spending 177 million for a bond that realized only 4.4 billion? I think it's important to raise this point. That is why I'm bringing it to the attention of Ghanaians. We are going to hold the minister before Parliament to give us full breakdown to account for every cedi that has been spent so far, making the 177 million we think is way too much, and I can smell something fishy. That's what I can smell.
Now, the chief executive of the Ghana Highway Authority, Victor Owusu, has been removed from office. He claims the Minister of Roads and Highways replaced him with one Ernest Kingsley Atta as the new chief executive without an appointment letter on Wednesday. Even though he's supposed to vacate the office, Mr. Owusu believes that per the Highway Authority Act, the president is mandated to appoint a new CEO and not the minister. Now, we're hoping to speak with Mr. Victor Owusu because we had spoken with him earlier for him to speak to us and tell us his challenges with the way he was removed from office, but we are unable to reach him. But we have been joined on the line now by the Deputy Roads Minister, Anthony Kabo. Good evening, and thank you for making time to join us, Mr. Kabo.
Very well, my brother. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Now, how do you respond to the claims by the former or the outgone chief executive of the Ghana Highway Authority? He says that due process was not followed in this removal from office.
Well, I think that it is important that we state very clearly that the chief executive officer, Mr. Victor Owusu, has not been removed from office. I think that his mandatory time of service and due for retirement has elapsed. And as you know, within the public service, because people who have gone on or who are due for retirement will have some time to process themselves and eventually take an accumulated leave. And in anticipation of the president's appointment, an acting officer will have to take charge of the agency. Don't forget, the Ghana Highway Authority is one of the most important agencies under the ministry, and it cannot be left in a vacuum until such time when the president makes an appointment.
All right, Mr. Kabo, just to recap what you've told us, you're indicating that essentially Mr. Owusu has not been removed from office, but it's gotten to the time his mandatory retirement period has. It has gotten to the time he's supposed to go on mandatory retirement, and that's what has happened, right?
Exactly. So this cue that you presented, that he's been removed from office, will suggest to anybody who doesn't understand the background that he's been removed unduly, especially when his time is not up.
All right. Granted, Mr. Kabo, Mr. Owusu is not so concerned about he being removed from office or he having to exit office. His challenge is with the way and manner it happened. He believes the due process wasn't followed. Now, one of the things he told us is that he went to the office on Thursday only to realize or only to find out that the locks to his office had been replaced. And so essentially he couldn't get access to his office and he had to, return home. How does that strike you?
Well, first of all, I indicated to you and in your radio station that I'm very uncomfortable discussing matters of my ministry in public. I believe that laid down procedures exist for us to resolve whatever impasse or difficulty Mr. Victor Owusu has. But for us to be on the media discussing matters of this nature is most unfortunate, and I think it's indecent, it's unacceptable as far as our ministry is concerned. My minister is out of the country, but discussions at the political level have gone on, and of course I do know that he was supposed to take an accumulated leave leading to his eventual retirement. And of course we cannot leave that space in a vacuum. Somebody must be in an acting capacity, hoping that the president will make an appointment subsequently to fill up that position. Whatever has happened in terms of office being locked up and all that is to allow for proper handing over to be done, and the new and acting chief executive down the line will be appointed. But like I indicated, we cannot leave the office in a vacuum. Somebody must be in an acting capacity. The directive of locking up his office, I cannot speak to that, but I do know that processes are underway to ensure that somebody is put in an acting capacity to help move the institution forward.
So essentially you're saying that this person who has been brought to the office is just in an acting capacity and that no formal appointment has been made?
These appointments are made by the president. The president is the only person who has the prerogative per the law to make an appointment. The minister has nothing directly with that, and it would be unfounded for anybody to suggest that the minister has a hand in this matter. The minister will only be following the laid-down procedures, which is that somebody must be taken over in an active capacity while the accumulated leave of Mr. Victor Owusu is seen through its proper end, and proper handing over procedures would have taken place. However, Israel, I have said earlier, and I'll repeat that again, that it is unfortunate that we have to discuss a mere administrative matter which can be handled competently at the ministry in the media.
All right, thank you very much, Anthony Cabo. Anthony Cabo is the Deputy Roads and Highways Minister. Police in Kumasi have gunned down 2 suspected robbers linked to persistent robbery attacks on passengers in taxis. Lukman Mohammed, alias Alpha, and Awudu Osman, also known as Awudu Ninja, were arrested in a special operation. They attempted to escape after leading the police to retrieve a cache of arms at an undisclosed location when police shot them. Love News' Kwesi Debra reports.
Lukman Mohammed and Awudu Osman were traced and arrested at their hideout. They confessed to police that they have arms and that they had hidden them in an uncompleted story building at Sepe, a suburb of Kumasi here in the Ashanti region. The 2 suspects led the police to the area to retrieve the arms. The suspects took the police to 4 separate hideouts without any trace of the said arms. While the search was ongoing, the 2 suspects, who were in separate handcuffs, jumped from 1-story building to escape from the police. They were, however, chased and fired to immobilize them from escaping. But suspect Awudu Osman died instantly, whilst suspect Lukman Mohammed was pronounced dead on arrival at Komfo Anokye Teaching Hospital.
Meanwhile, 3 other suspects have been arrested in a separate swoop. They are 27-year-old Emmanuel Fosu, 25-year-old Farouk Amadou, also known as Boga, and Saliu Yakubu, alias Baba Tunde or T.I. Some of the victims pointed them out at an identification parade at the regional command headquarters earlier today in Kumasi. The suspects are said to subject victims, especially females, to inhumane treatment, including sexual assault. They drive taxi cabs and pick unsuspecting passengers early to attack them in the middle of the journey. The victims are left in pain to their fate, often in the bush. Farouk Amadou has admitted involvement in a robbery incident that led to the death of victims. In a related development, police on Monday arrested 29-year-old man believed to be a member of another robbery syndicate. Kwesi Abua and 2 others who are on the run have been on police wanted list for a long time. Police strongly warn all individuals and criminal gangs give up their activities or face full rigors of the law. They also advise the commuting public, especially females, to be extra vigilant when boarding taxis at obscure places.
The act or face the full rigors of the law. We also advise women that if you are going to use the money on your mobile phone, it's important that if you're not going to use the monies that have been sent to you immediately, you deposit those monies at the bank for safekeeping. We also suggest and advise that we pick vehicles at recognized stations so that we avoid those that are loading by the roadside or those we popularly call Wawa. We also suggest and advise that for those women, we should walk in groups after church, after school, or after work.
The Psychiatric Nurses Group at the Anka Psychiatric Hospital is giving the Ministry of Health a week's ultimatum to remove the medical director, Dr. Eugene Dodoe, or face a strike action. The workers about 2 weeks ago petitioned the Health Ministry and the Mental Health Authority over what they describe as the medical director's oppressive rule and insensitivity towards workers. The workers say after the expiration of the ultimatum, they will lay down their tools and release mental patients out onto the streets. At a news conference at the Anka Psychiatric Hospital, the leader of the Workers' Union, Daniel Danso Sapong, says the workers are not in the right frame of mind to continue working under the medical director.
In PNG petition, we stated categorically and unequivocally that we do not want to work with our hospital director anymore on the following grounds. 1. Fundamental human right is being trampled upon by the hospital director every day. He doesn't treat staff with even a minimal level of dignity, as though we are from a different planet. The director has no respect for the workers' dignity. He picks personal problems with staff when they attend different hospitals for treatment, and then subsequently turn in excuse duties to the facility. He would question the clinical judgment of the medical officer who is a signatory to the excuse duty. A pregnant woman who is a nurse at our facility was given an excuse duty for testing ++ for malaria. The hospital director questioned the physician assistant why he gave the excuse duty to the said nurse. 2, he embarrasses and uses derogatory remarks on staff, especially the nurses. He accuses wrongfully and demeans us in the presence of students, patients, and their relatives. This makes our patients who have witnessed his encounter with nurses lose interest in the very nurses who are taking care of them. And on countless occasions, some patients have disrespected nurses and told them that your director said you don't know anything. There is also misuse of the hospital's scarce resources by the hospital director. Also raised in the petition, and we have called for a forensic auditing of the hospital. But as of now, we have not heard anything to that effect. We are emotionally and psychologically breaking down, and we do not have peace of mind to care for our patient. We need peace, we need sound mind to care for our patient. The Akan people has a saying that when the frog comes out of the water and says the crocodile is dead, we do not challenge it. In the same vein, when the psychiatric health workers who provide care to the mentally challenged and understand behavior says that they are psychologically and emotionally breaking down, don't condemn them. Take them serious.
Yes.